Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 6.1 for Pearson. Today we'll be talking about dividing fractions and whole numbers. So during our last topic, our last chapter, we were talking about multiplication with fractions and whole numbers and mixed numbers. And this time, this chapter, we'll be talking about division of fractions and whole numbers and mixed numbers. But I think that you'll make a lot of connections between what you learned during that last chapter and what you'll be learning in this chapter. In fact, if you would like to go back and review any of those concepts, I would highly recommend you do that before you go on to division, because you'll be using a lot of division or multiplication when you're doing the division problems. So for this launch, go ahead and find this in your student companion book and answer the question. Find each quotient. What is 4 divided by 4? What is 4 divided by 2? What's 4 divided by 1? And what's 4 divided by 1/2? Let's go ahead and talk about these. Well, 4 divided by 4, if you had 4 M&Ms, dividing them amongst 4 people, that would be everybody gets 1 M&M. If you have 4 M&Ms dividing them amongst 2 people, everyone would get 2 M&Ms. If you have 4 M&Ms divided amongst 1 person, well, that person would get 4 M&Ms. So if you have 4 M&Ms divided by a half a person, oh, that's interesting. What did you get for that question? What's 4 divided by a half? Let's go ahead and see what the solution is. Okay, oh, and they're showing you on a number line. 4 divided by 1, one giant circle is 1. 4 divided by 2, we've got 2 groups. 4 divided by 1, we've got 4 circles here. And 4 divided by 1/2, well, we've got a half a circle. Every one has 2 half circles or 2 circles in it. And that would actually end up with 8 circles. And if you didn't understand that, or if you couldn't get to an answer, that's okay. And here's an example of an answer for the reflection question, but we'll be going through and talking about how this works and why this works throughout this lesson. So let's go ahead and jump to part 1.
You can use a model to divide a fraction by a non-zero whole number. Here is how to show 1/2 divided by 2. This number line is divided into fourths. You can use this number line to show 1/2 divided by 2. First, label 1/2, the dividend. Since the divisor is 2, divide 1/2 into 2 equal parts. In this model, the quotient is the length of each equal segment. Because the interval length of each equal segment is 1/4, 1/2 divided by 2 equals 1/4. Multiplication and division have an inverse relationship. The model also shows 1/4 times 2 equals 1/2.
Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. If you had half of a candy bar and you needed to share it with maybe you and your brother, you would do 1/2 divided by 2, and you would each get half of a half. Well, half of a half is a fourth. So 1/2 divided by 2 is 1/4. So that's how we're thinking about these in our mind. If you think in a number line and you think this way, that's fine. I like to just think about it with like a candy bar, because if we're going to have a half divided by 2 people, well, we're going to get half of a half, which is 1/4. Let's go ahead and try this example together. Match the division and corresponding multiplication equations with their models. So let's go ahead and look at these equations first. So we have 1/6 times 3 equals 1/2. Well, which one of these models shows us 1/6 times 3 equals 1/2? Well, this one we have 3 groups, but they're broken into fourths, it looks like. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, a whole. So we're not working with 6. This one is broken into fifths, so we're not working with 6 here. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces, so this one must go here. And we're showing 1/6 3 times gives us 1/2. So let's find its division partner. That must be 1/2 divided into 3 chunks would be 1/6. Now let's look at 4/5 divided by 2. Well, which one shows 4/5 split in half? It looks like it's going to be this one, and this is the division model. So now let's find the one that would be 2/5. So here's 2/5. Each one of these spaces represents 1/5. So the purple line shows 2/5, and two groups of 2/5, or 2/5 times 2, is 4/5, which means that these two must be the last ones. And you can look at these examples of 1/4 times 3 will give you 3/4, or 3/4 broken into 3 sections will give you 1/4. All right, so we've got that one. Let's go ahead and try your first got it in your student companion book. So which division equation, division, not multiplication, does this number line show? Look at 2/3 and you're breaking it into 2 parts. So what could you say for this? Hopefully you were able to say it's 2/3 divided by 2 equals 1/3. You're splitting this space of 2/3 into 2 equal parts. So 2/3 divided by 2. And go ahead and read this question. Actually, I'll have the computer read it.
When you divide a fraction by a whole number greater than 1, how does the quotient compare to the fraction? Explain your reasoning.
Okay, so when you're dividing a fraction by a whole number which is greater than 1, how does the quotient compare to the fraction? Well, it's going to say that the quotient is always going to be less than the fraction, because with division, when you're dividing by a whole number, we're getting smaller. So dividing the fraction by a whole number is just like dividing regular whole numbers. The quotient is less. The answer is less. All right, let's jump to part 2.
You can also use a model to divide a whole number by a fraction. Show 2 divided by 1/2. This number line is divided into halves. You can use this number line to show 2 divided by 1/2. First, label the halves. Then, divide the number line into segments of length 1/2. In this model, the quotient is the number of equal segments, which is the same as the number of ovals. There are 4 equal segments of 1/2, so 2 divided by 1/2 equals 4.
The way that I think about these types of problems is how many halves are in a 2. So here's a half, here's a half, here's a half, and here's a half. So how many halves are inside of a 2? There would be 4. So 4 would be your answer. And what they're about to show you is if you work backwards and you do 4 times 1/2, you would get 2. So again, showing that inverse operation. Let's go ahead and go to our example and see if we can solve these matching problems. So match the division and the multiplication equations. Well, 3 times 2/3 equals 2. Well, I need 3 groups, and each group needs to be a 2/3 group. So that looks like it's this one. Each group is 2/3, and I have 3 groups, and I end on 2. 6 times 1/3. Well, I need 6 groups of 1/3 pieces. That looks like it's this one. I also end on 2. And 8 times 1/4. Well, I need 8 1/4 pieces, and that would be this one. And now I'm just going to put all the inverse operations in here and see if we're correct. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead to the got it. What division equation does this number line model show? So let's first count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So that means each one of the spaces is 1/4. So each one of the ovals is 1, 2, 3/4 because it's circling 3 of those 4th pieces. So we've got 3. Actually, I'm going to let you think about it. 3 divided by something. So 3 divided by something. What would you get? All right, hopefully you were able to see it's 3 divided by 3/4 equals 4, because when you divide them up into how many 3/4 pieces are in 3, we're going to get 4 ovals, and 4 represents our answer. When you divide a non-zero whole number, meaning a number that's not 0, by a proper fraction, meaning it's not improper, How does the quotient, the answer, compare to the whole number? Explain your reasoning. Well, the quotient is greater than the whole number, and each equal segment is less than 1. So the number of equal segments is always greater than the number of whole segments. Like what we just did, the number that we were dividing by was less than 1. So this number is going to be greater than our original number that we were working with. Let's go ahead and go to our key concept. Now remember when I told you that in division, we're going to be using a lot of multiplication, and when we're working with dividing fractions, we're not going to be using those number lines very much. We'll use them every once in a while, but we're mostly going to be using this rule, and so this rule is extremely important for you to write down and remember. Keep in your math journal, keep somewhere really important, maybe even make a poster about this, because this is what you're going to be used for this whole entire chapter. So let's go ahead and take our time on this. So we're going to be dividing fractions, and we're going to start with our rule for dividing with fractions right here. First, let's talk briefly about what a reciprocal is. This word right here is a reciprocal. You will need to know what a reciprocal is for the rest of your time in math. So a reciprocal is, the way I think about it, is the opposite of a number, and the correct definition is a number is a reciprocal if their product, if when you multiply them together, their product is 1, but it's really just a flipped fraction, and so the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. The reciprocal of 1/4 is 4, or 4/1. The reciprocal of 9/12 is 12/9. So what's the reciprocal of 5/7? 7/5. What's the reciprocal of 1/3? 3/1. So we're just taking the denominator and moving it to the numerator, and taking the numerator and moving it to the denominator, and then that results in the reciprocal. Okay, so you're going to really need to know that. Go ahead and make a poster for that if you need to hang that up somewhere. So we'll jump into how to divide a fraction by a whole number. And when we were doing multiplication, we could work in any order. We could say, we could put the 2 here, or the 2 here, and the 3/4 here or here. With division, we can't do that. We have to go in order. We have to go in the order that they gave us. So it says to divide a non-zero number, including with the fraction, you can multiply you can multiply by the divisor's reciprocal. That's a lot of math vocabulary, so let's go ahead and break that down. And just so you know, I'm already at 13 minutes, so we're going to have a second video for this, just so we don't have to rush too much at the end of this. So go ahead and find that video when this one is over. Okay, sorry for that little delay. So we're going to do 2 divided by 3/4. So let me grab my black pen, and we're going to say 2 divided by 3/4. So we're going to write my numerator first in red, and then my denominator I'm going to do in blue. 3/4. And I need that dividing, or that fraction bar, that division bar, 3/4. And so the way you do this is you just say 2, and we're going to multiply. We're going to change this division to multiplication. And in order to do that, we have to take the reciprocal of this. So instead of writing 2 times 3/4, we're going to write 2 times 4/3. 4/3. And when we do that, that's going to give us our answer. And we already know how to multiply a whole number times a fraction. So we're going to do 2/1. 2 times 4 is 8. And 1 times 3 is 3. And we know how to change an improper fraction to a mixed number. So that would give us 2 2/3 as our answer. Okay, so 2 divided by 3/4 is 2 2/3. And we can rewrite that problem as a multiplication thing by multiplication problem by finding the reciprocal of 3/4. All right, so we'll do a bunch more problems in our second video. Go ahead and stop this video now and find that second video.